Hey everyone, today I am back in Lost Ark because Tier 4 has been out for almost a week now, maybe a couple of days delayed because of the maintenance and the hotfix that had to come in, but it's been out for a couple of days, so I wanted to kind of go over the new content that you can expect with Tier 4, kind of talk about the new progression system, the new skills that we get, that kind of stuff, in case people are a little bit confused about that, and kind of just go through everything from start to finish, getting into Tier 4 to the systems that come with it. So the first thing that you need to do is get to 1620 and then finish the North Curzon storyline. Once you've done that, the game will ask you if you want to press Alt Q, which is normally going to be bringing up this little UI over here. This is like the old Tier 3 UI for your dailies and your weeklies, like your Legion raids and that kind of stuff. But it will ask you if you want to change your UI to the Kazaros war map. And that is going to be this interface over here. This is essentially what we'll be using to do our dailies and our weeklies going forward into Tier 4. So you can see down here the Kazaros raid, Echidna, and then soon also the Aegir raid. We've got Behemoth over here as well. The rewards for both Echidna and Behemoth have been changed to now give Tier 4 materials and accessories, as you can see over here. Then of course we have a Guardian raid, this is the new one. And then we have the Curzon Front. Now Curzon Front is essentially going to be the new Chaos Dungeon. You do need to be 1640 to get in here. I'll explain in just a second how you get there. But this is the new Chaos Dungeon. Still works sort of the same, as in you go in, you kill a bunch of monsters, they drop loot, kill monsters until the bar reaches 100% and then you're done. The main difference is that it's just one big map now instead of 3 smaller maps, and you also run it only once a day instead of twice a day. And it's also faster, so it's only 1 run instead of 2, and the 1 run is also faster than a normal Chaos Dungeon run. So it just feels really good to do these. There's also a bunch of power-ups that you can get through these things over here. As you can see, level 3 Curzon Frontline, or Curzon Front, I already have some extra bonuses over here. As you level these up further, you're just going to speed through your dailies even more, which feels pretty good. Then of course, we already saw this one over here, the Kazaros raid Aegir, which is releasing next week. And then we have the Kenward Fortress. This has an entry level of 1620, so this is where we are going to begin our Tier 4 journey. When you go into the Kenward Fortress, as you can see, it can drop a box, but essentially what this is it is one big Chaos Dungeon, takes about 5 minutes to clear, maybe a bit faster or slower depending on what class you're playing, but this is where you will get your Tier 4 starter relic gear. It can drop 1 drop at the end of the run, can drop 2 drops, maybe 3 drops. There's no bad luck protection, so depending on how RNG decides to bless you, you're either going to be done with this in like 3 runs, like my Breaker, or you could be here for 10 plus runs, like my Aeromancer. You just have to be a little bit lucky with RNG. I do believe that this selector box over here drops once a day guaranteed. It can drop as a random drop as well if you're just farming it, but I have heard that this drops guaranteed the first time you run it every single day. So if you don't want to be bothered with the RNG, then you could just run this once a day until you have all the coffers to then get all of the gear that you need. But yeah, that's basically where we're going to be starting. Now, once you have run this enough to get all of your relic gear, you can then go to the honing merchant or honing NPC, whatever you want to call him, and infuse all of your relic gear into your old ancient gear into the new relic gear, and that will then give you 20 extra item levels, setting you up at 1640 or whatever item level it might be, depending on the item level you had previously. I was 1621, so I become 1641 in Tier 4. Once you're done with that, a new quest will open up, which is going to give you access to your Hyper Awakening. We can open up combat skills over here, and if I scroll down, you can see my Hyper Awakenings. You can also see my Hyper Awakening techniques. Most classes have 2 of them. I believe Deadeye and Gunslinger have 3 of them, because they already have more skills in general. Usually one will be for one build, the other will be for the other. For example, this is an Umbrella skill, it's good for Wind Fury. This is a Weather skill, good for Drizzle, just to give an example. Hyper Awakening and Hyper Awakening skill then, these are going to be basically a normal awakening, and this is your Hyper Awakening. This is a much stronger version, does fixed damage, makes you invincible while you're using it as well. But I'll talk more about these 2 things when we go into Trixion, where I kind of showcase the new things. Then the last thing that we get access to is down here. You can see that I now have some points already. These are my evolution points, my enlightenment points, and my leap arc passive points. These we can't really play around with too much yet because bracelets aren't in the game yet. But I'll go over what these three stats do when we hit Trixion as well. To turn on the Arc passives, because right now we are working with a relic set, like for example I have the hallucination relic set on, we have our normal engravings as well, and then we have our normal accessories as well. But if I want to turn on the Arc passive, I just come down here, click Arc passive, turn on Arc passive, and then you can see it's going to disable combat stats, set bonuses, and engravings, and we're going to be switching over to the new stuff. I'm going to turn this on already because otherwise Trixion is going to bug out, but let's go over to Trixion now so I can kind of talk about how this system works. So now that I am in Trixion, let's take a look at what all these Arc passives give us. So when it comes down to the evolution tree, this is going to be tied to your armor. As you can see my 5 armor pieces over here. These will be giving us points for our evolution tree. The other thing that will give us points here are going to be our character levels. Between the levels 50 and 70, because 70 is the new level cap, we're going to be getting 1 point per level, aka 20 points in total. The other 100 points we can get from our armor. We start with our normal relic gear, and as you can see, it gives us 8 evolution points. When the Aegir raid comes out next week, we're going to be getting Aegir gear, and that gear will give us 20 points in total. So right now, we can get 40 points from our gear and 20 points from our character level, so 60 in total. Once Aegir is out, we can get 120 in total, which is the maximum amount of points that you can apply to this system. The way it works is simple. You fill up all the points in one node, and then you can move on to the second, the third, and the fourth. The first node has to do with your stats. As you can see, I have some crit here, I've got some swiftness over here. Then the second node is going to be like your set effects that you're used to from your relic gear. So boundless mana, nightmare set, illicit spell, the other side of the nightmare set, keen sense crit rate, so kind of like hallucination, limit breaking, this is just pure damage, cooldown reduction if you're playing like Dominion for example, and then this is the replacement of yearning. One thing to note is that yearning got nerfed. It's only 9% now when it comes down to attack speed, movement speed, but it is like overall going to be stronger than the old yearning set. Then the third three, again, more set bonus, so unlimited magic, the second part of boundless mana, zealous might, more crit rate, so again hallucination, etc, etc. So this is for example also for like ambush master or front attack classes, and there's some other ones in here as well. I'm not going to go over everything. But the way it works, very simple. You put points in these, and then as you can see, the rest of the tree is going to open up until I have spent all of my points, and then I can just hit save, and there we go. I have now made a build. If you want to change things up a bit because of like a different team composition, like let's say for example, you want a crit synergy, but you don't have one, you're missing 10% crit rate. Well, what if I take away some cooldown reduction and I just put more into crit rate? So now I have a better crit rate. Something I could do. There's also some other choice you can make, like for example here the crit rate. Maybe you don't really need this one, so you just go full damage instead. Maybe you do need the extra 10%, you just take 1 out of damage more into crit rate. You can kind of just play around with it as you see fit, depending on team composition or depending on the class that you play. Play around with this a little bit, or just look at a guide to see which are the best ones to take. The second tree, the Enlightenment tree, this has to do with your accessories. Now your accessories, right now I am equipping my old tier 3 ones, but I'm quickly going to show you what a tier 4 accessory looks like. I have one over here. This has to do with quality. So depending on the quality of your accessory, you're going to get more enlightenment points on it. 67 is the magic number here. As soon as you have 67 quality, you get the maximum amount of enlightenment points. On top of that, you also get a reforge bonus. Now this is where the RNG aspect of accessories in tier 4 comes in. These are randomly rolled stat lines. So think tier 3 bracelets where you have to roll for stat lines, but now you're doing it on your accessories. There's a much smaller pool and all of the effects are kind of okay. There will of course be best in slot lines that you can get, like for example crit rate is generally a pretty good one, crit damage. And then depending on the class that you play, like support or DPS, you're looking for different lines. But you want to upgrade them for two reasons. One, to get those 3 stat lines in there, and two, to increase the amount of Enlightenment points, because you start with a small amount of points and then every time you reforge it, you get more points on the accessory. And when you max out all 3 reforge bonuses, that is where you get the maximum amount of Enlightenment points. So that's one way that you get them. The other way that you get Enlightenment points is just the same as with the evolution tree, character levels. So leveling to 70 is going to give you more points as well. It's going to cap out at 92. Now, just like with the evolution points as well, relic accessories will give you, I believe it is around 70 maximum, is barely going to be enough to finish these 3. Yeah, 72 is what you can get maximum by getting all of the relic accessories maxed out. But then when you get to 1680, you get access to ancient accessories, and that's going to allow you to get the other 20 points. There is a pretty big difference in damage because it allows you to get access to the 4th line, and the 4th line is going to increase your damage by quite a bit. So I'm going to activate them right now. For my Aeromancer, as an example, every time I use my Sun Shower, so that is going to be this thing right here, whenever I turn on my little circle, I'm going to be getting a stacking damage buff, which stacks up to 2 times, which is going to make my Umbrella skills just deal more damage. I believe it is about 2.4%. Yeah, because 1.2% per stack times 2, 2.4% more Umbrella skill damage, which is a fair amount. The other thing in the tree, as you can see down here, is that I get a new skill. So on my X skill, I now have a new skill for my Aeromancer as well. So those two things combined, an entire extra skill to your rotation, as well as 2.4% extra damage, is going to be a fairly decent damage increase. So when it comes down to wanting to switch over to this system, you need to have the first 3 unlocked. So that means level 70 and maxed out relic accessories. And for the evolution tree, it depends. For some characters, you can already switch just at level 70 with normal relic gear. For most characters, you can switch when you get the first Aegir Ancient piece. For all the others, you can switch as soon as you have 2 pieces. Depends on the class that you play. Research it a little bit in Trixion, like compare your old build versus a build with the limited points that you get from your relic gear and your stats and that kind of stuff. Kind of see how the damage weighs up against each other, but just play around with it a little bit. The main thing you need to know is that as soon as you hit Aegir, you'll usually be able to switch over after you get 1, or you can definitely switch after you get 2 ancient pieces, and then you can start playing around with this system. The last one then is going to be working around your Hyper Awakening technique. Can be making it deal more damage, like Hyper Awakening skill damage 10%. This, for example, Hyper Awakening technique damage, that is what most people are going to be taking. For example, my Aeromancer has some serious mana issues right now with the Hyper Awakening skill, or Hyper Awakening technique, the T skill, whatever you want to call it. So I can take MP cost reduction here, and then to fill out the rest of my points, I can take this one over here to get some cooldown reduction on it. The second 3 we don't have access to right now because we don't have bracelets in the game yet. They're going to be coming out when we get the second raid, Belshazzar, and that will then give us access to this 3 right here, which is going to allow us to take like some other skills or other passives that will actually be quite a big increase for these skills as well. Like for example, Soul Eater, I know right now the hyper skill is a fairly long animation, but it's going to make it just like an instant skill almost. So quite a big upgrade once you do get access to this, but again, something for the future. Now, in terms of Hyper Awakening and hyper skills, I briefly touched upon them before, but I never actually showcased what they look like. So when it comes down to hyper skills, very simple, it's just an extra skill. I can press it, boom, there we go, I now used my hyper skill. They're generally on a pretty long cooldown, so you're not going to be able to use them like all the time, but they are something to use. They're generally some pretty hefty hitting skills as well, so make sure you use them when they are up. When it comes down to the Hyper Awakening, you can see that my Hyper Awakening is ready because it has the red glowing circle around it, and also because of the Alt V that shows up, which is the button to press. Now, something that's important to note is that your Hyper Awakening is tied to the same cooldown as your normal Awakening. So if I were to use my Awakening right here, you can see that I now have a 4-minute cooldown, and I can't press my Hyper Awakening because even if I'm pressing it, the skill is on cooldown. So that's something that's very important to keep track on. So if I reset my cooldowns, you can see that now I can use it. Hyper Awakening itself just gives you a pretty animation. It does a lot of damage, as you can see right here. I'm literally hitting it for like 1 billion damage almost. And, even more importantly, it makes you invincible when you're using this, which is very good to know because it allows you to kind of cheese certain attacks that would otherwise be quite dangerous. So if there's a very dangerous pattern that you're not good at dodging, for example, you could use your Hyper Awakening to kind of get away with it and not have to do the mechanic. On the other hand, Hyper Awakenings, very strong, deal a lot of damage. Your supports, Hyper Skill, so this thing, but then for supports, will also buff the damage of everybody else's Hyper Awakening. So if there is a specific point in a fight where you want to just push the boss through a mechanic, or you want to just straight up kill it, like for example Gate 1 Theamine, when you break the shield of the boss in the final phase, you can just straight up kill it so that you can skip the final very annoying mechanic. Well, that is a point where you would just use your Hyper Awakenings together so that you can basically just kill the boss straight away. Your support should save their Hyper Technique in order to just kill the boss over there, because it makes you do more damage. And that is basically what your Hyper Awakening and Hyper Technique does. The Technique is just another skill to use. Your Hyper Awakening is just a stronger version of your Awakening that also comes with a cool animation and invincibility as well. One last thing to note, I guess, is that your Hyper Awakening does fixed damage, so things like Dark Grenade, Atropine Potion, they don't affect this. So use it on things where, you know, the boss doesn't have damage reduction, because that still applies, but just use it in places where you wouldn't use an Atropine. Like, for example, when we're talking about the Behemoth raid, whenever he drops the head, you'd be like, oh, double damage, let's use Hyper Awakenings. Doesn't work there because it just does fixed damage. You're better off using your normal skills and your Hyper Technique, because the Hyper Technique does count as a normal skill, sort of, so you can still use that one. But yeah, I think that covers the Arc passive system, kinda. Left 3 comes with armor. This is like the replacement for your stats and your set bonuses. Middle 3 has to do with your accessories, replacing your class engraving, and then also giving you some new stuff once you do unlock the final 3 with ancient accessories. Rightmost 3 affecting your Hyper Skill and Hyper Awakening. You're usually going to be taking stuff for your Hyper Skill, or the Hyper Technique, whatever you want to call it. Has to do with your bracelets, which are not in the game yet. Then there are still 2 more things to talk about, and then we're finished. The first one, gems. This one's very easy. When you convert your tier 3 gems to tier 4, they're going to be leveled down by 2 levels. The damage and cooldown reduction will stay the same, unless you're converting a level 10 damage gem. Level 10 damage gems lose some damage. You're still going to be gaining the new tier 4 effect, which is the basic attack that you can see over here, and also the total basic attack. But level 10 damage gems, in some cases you don't want to switch them. If your skill does, like, I think it's 30% of your total damage, you don't want to switch the damage gem over to tier 4 yet, until you can replace it with a level 9 damage gem in tier 4. A level 8 damage gem in tier 4 is less value than a level 10 damage gem in tier 3, so kind of look what you need to change, yes or no, but anything below level 10 you just immediately want to switch, because the damage and the cooldown reduction is going to stay the same, on top of the fact that you now get the bonus effect of basic attack. This also means that your supports now want full gems as well, because it means that they get a stronger damage buff that they can provide to the team as well. Like, this basic attack will be increasing their damage buffing capabilities. So those are tier 4 gems. The last thing then are engravings. Now, because our accessories no longer have engravings and stats on them, that's going to be interacting with this system over here. This is what our accessories do now. And then also the randomly rolled lines that I showed you before, like the attack power, weapon power, crit rate. That's what accessories have now. They no longer have engravings. It means that we need to get our engravings somewhere else. Now, the way how this works, very simple. You just have your engravings, and I can't actually do this in Trixion, but I can do it here. You're just going to be clicking on the ones that you want, and you can just equip them like this. So this is, for example, what my Aeromancer would be equipping if I was outside of Trixion, and then it looks something like this, and then you can also see the overview of what you have. Now, what are these grayed out nodes, and like these nodes that you can see over here, times X times X? Well, those have to do with the relic books. So right now in the game, your engraving starts at basic, the blue. Then you can level it up to epic, which is the purple books. Then you have legendary, which are the golden books. And now in tier 4, we also have relic books, which are going to be making our engravings even stronger. The cool thing about the relic books though, is that you don't need 20 of them to increase your engraving effect. As soon as you have 5, you already get an upgrade. And this is something that I can do in Trixion as well. So these are the nodes. For example, if we go to Grudge, let's say I've bought 5 Grudge books, and let's say I bought 10 Adrenaline books. And I now go back to my page over here. You can see that I have one node active under Grudge, which is going to give me 0.5% bonus damage to bosses. And you can see that I have 2 nodes active in Adrenaline, which gives me level 2 relic effect, which is 3% more crit rate when I get the max Adrenaline stacks. Of course, eventually you'll want to have all of the relic books unlocked, all 20 for all of your engravings, but that is going to be something that will take a very long time, because at the moment, because it's new, it is incredibly expensive to buy these books, but eventually you'll be able to get all of them, and then you'll be able to make yourself quite a bit stronger when you do max all of these out. Now, the other thing you can see here in the middle is that there's still an ability stone. Now, again, it's not really applied to me right now because of Trixion, but if I look at my old ability stone right here, it gives me 6 Hitmaster, 7 Raid Captain, which is going to translate to level 1 Hitmaster, level 2 Raid Captain. The cutoff points, if I'm not mistaken, are level 5, 7, 9, and 10 to get level 1, 2, 3, and 4. So in this case, level 1 Hitmaster, level 2 Raid Captain. So again, let me apply that over here as well. Level 1 Hitmaster, level 2 Raid Captain. Boom, there we go. Was that correct? That was correct. If I then go to my engravings, you can see that my Hitmaster is now being buffed by level 1, which is giving me 3% more damage. And you can see that my Raid Captain is being buffed by level 2, which is 9.4% bonus damage coming from my movement speed. So that's kind of how ability stones work now. The ideal ability stone will be 4 points in total. That's kind of what you're aiming for. Of course, if you can get more, then that is better. But 4 points is kind of what you're aiming for a good ability stone. So if you already have 7 7s on all of your classes, or like a 9 5, that's also still 4 points, then you're good to just go with this as well. If you only have 3 points like I do, you might want to try to cut a new ability stone to get 4 points on there. Not really the end of the world, but of course it is going to be more damage, and might also be something that people look at when it comes down to like gatekeeping stuff. But yeah, I think that covers just about everything tier 4 related. When it comes down to the Ark passive system, how you go about engravings, the new gems. And yeah, I think that covers just about everything. So if you have any more questions about how the system works, if you're not quite sure about certain things, feel free to leave a comment down below and I'll try to get back to you. But for now, that's gonna do it for me. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.